Welcome to Zoology Lesson 3. This is a lesson where we're going to talk a little bit about invertebrate animals. Invertebrates are a certain kind of animal, and we're going to start with a fun activity today, okay? I'm going to drag these animals to the other side of the page and put them in this chart, and I'm going to sort them, one side on one column and one kind of animal on the other. And you try to think about why the animals are all grouped together. What do they have that are the same on their side, and how are they different from the animals on the other side? Let's go ahead and move the jellyfish over to the right side, and the koala bear is going to go on the left side, and the spider on the right side, and the elephant, and the lion, and the bumblebee, and the worm. Where do you think it's going to go? I think it's going to go on the right side, and it does. And the fish, it's going to go on the left side. And the mosquito on the right side. And the puppy, well, you probably guessed it, it's on the left side too. Well, there is something unique about these animals that are on the left side and something unique about the animals on the right side. Do you know what it is? Well, I'm not going to tell you quite yet, okay? But I will tell you what the animals on the left side are. They are vertebrates. And we're going to get to what that means here in a little bit. And the ones on the right side are called invertebrates. And that's what we're going to be studying today. Our research is going to be about invertebrate animals. And there are many, many invertebrate animals. The snail is just one of them. To do that, we're going to compare vertebrates with invertebrates. And which is the cute vertebrate here? It's the little puppy, right? Like we saw in our game, the dog was with the vertebrates. And on the left side here is a picture of the face of a praying mantis. These are fun little invertebrates. Well, I wonder what vertebrate means. You can look that up in the dictionary, but I'm just going to tell you what it is right here. What it means to be a vertebrate animal is to have a backbone or a vertebral column, like an animal. So you have a spine that runs down your back. All animals do. You can look from the neck of a lion all the way down to its back legs. There's a spine, and a dog does the same thing. And if you have a little puppy or a cat, you can go get that. You could pause this video and you can go get your puppy or your cat, and you could feel to see if you could feel the bone, the bumpy bone along the inside or the middle of the back. So what do you think it means to be an invertebrate animal? So if vertebrates are animals with a backbone, then what do you think invertebrate means? Or what kind of animal is an invertebrate animal? I'm going to give you a hint. If you add in or m in front of any word, it changes its meaning to be the opposite of, not any word, but almost any word. So let's take the word impossible, right? Impossible means you can't do it, right? It's impossible. But if I take I am off, it means possible, which is the opposite of possible. I can do it. Impossible, I can't do it. So vertebrate means I have a backbone, and invertebrate means I don't have a backbone, right? Invertebrates are animals without a backbone. All of these animals that you see on the screen right now, the spider, the mosquito, the bumblebee, the worm, the jellyfish, these are animals that don't have a backbone. All right, here's the question for you. Are you a human? Are you a vertebrate or an invertebrate? And here's a picture that will give you a hint. And if you don't know still, you can reach around your back with your hand, reach around with one of your hands, and take your fingers and press them into the middle of your back and try to feel for a bone. See if you have a backbone. Do you feel that bumpy bone in the middle? Run your hand along the bone as far up as you can and as far down as you can feel it. And then you know that you are indeed a vertebrate. So you are a vertebrate, just like vertebrate animals. You have a backbone. Well, that is one of the first important differences between vertebrates and invertebrates that we're going to study, is that invertebrate animals do not have a backbone. A starfish is just one example. The other important point, is that there are far more invertebrate animals in the world than vertebrates. Ants are just one kind of invertebrate animal. Fun fact, how many more invertebrates are there than vertebrates in the world? Do you know? For every vertebrate, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 invertebrates. That means there's 9 times as many invertebrate animals as vertebrate animals. That's quite a few, huh? So we're way outnumbered, aren't we? Well, scientists who study animals have grouped invertebrates and vertebrates into little categories, of animals based on common characteristics, so things that they share. So we might group based on things that we are too, and animals are grouped the same way. We group ourselves based on where we live. So we are Americans. Well, if you're from Europe, you might be a European, or a South American, right? Or a South African if you're from the country of South Africa. Or we might say if you live in California that you're a Californian. Well, scientists do the same thing with animals, and we're going to study some of the subcategories called phylums. I know that's a really tough word, phylums, but that's the word that they use to categorize different groups of invertebrate animals. And we're going to study the 6 most common ones, okay? The first one that we're going to talk about is one called the porifera invertebrate. And then we're going to study the cnidarian invertebrates. And then the echinoderm. And then the mollusca invertebrates. And the worm invertebrates that you probably are familiar with already. And then the arthropods. Sponges, they're the first one that we're going to talk about, and they are part of the porifera phylum. Sponges feed on particles in the ocean as the water passes through them. Does this look like an animal to you? It doesn't really look like an animal to me, but it really is. It is an animal that lives and breathes oxygen and needs food to survive, just like we do. Sponges are nature's natural water filter. And we're going to watch a little video now that I love that shows how water passes through a sponge. And imagine water passing through in tiny little pores on those sponges. Just like you have pores on your skin, these sponges have pores on their bodies too that the water passes through, and it grabs these little particles of bacteria and food that it uses to eat.
Sponges are very effective filter feeders since they're able to capture and eat particles as small as bacteria as well as larger particles. They might not look like they're doing much, but a simple demonstration shows how effectively sponges can pump water. On a reef in the Caribbean, I make a dive with a syringe filled with a non-toxic dye called fluorescein. By squirting it around the base of some sponges, we can observe how the water is moving by watching what the dye does. Within only seconds, the dye is pumped through the sponges along with the water. As you can see, a sponge is a pretty good water pump and also a good strainer. Any plankton that goes in with the water won't come back out through the osculum. The ultimate test is a hefty barrel sponge. What will a big monster like this do? It takes a few seconds for the dye to work its way through the sponge. Wait for it. But then it pours out like smoke from a chimney. That's pretty good pumping from those tiny little collar cells.
Okay, that was a great video. Did you enjoy that? Learning more about sponges and how water passes through them and goes up through the inside of them out like a chimney? Well, now we're going to talk about the cnidarian phylum. It's the next one. Cnidarians are anemones and corals and jellyfish. These are the 2 groups of different cnidarian, and these are beautiful. Anemones and corals actually are part of a group called Anthozoa, and Anthozoa means flower animals. You can see why they're called flower animals, right? You look at these little anemones and the corals there, and they just look like flowers, don't they? But they're not flowers, they are animals. Well, there are 1,000 unique cnidarian animals, and their bodies are made up of jelly-like substance. Some of them are very, very jelly, like these jellyfish, and that's the other group. And they have muscles, unlike the porifera. The porifera don't have any muscles, right? Sponges, they don't have muscles, but these have muscles, and so they can move around in the water using their muscles. And they also have little teeny stingers that they use to catch their prey. If you notice, the jellyfish have stingers that point down, and the anemones have little stingers that they have sticking up, like on the left side of this page. And both of them fire little arrows at their prey and sting them. And if you've ever been swimming in the Caribbean or somewhere south, like in Florida, or an area where they have jellyfish, you might have swam over a jellyfish and got a little sting that feels like a bee. It doesn't feel good. It's never happened to me, but my wife has been stung by a jellyfish once, and it kind of put a welt on her skin and looked kind of like a bee. Anyway, they use those stingers to catch prey. Well, they have to watch out too, because jellyfish and other anemones and corals can actually be eaten by bigger animals. And so we're going to watch a little video that shows you a battle between a sea turtle and a jellyfish. Who do you think is going to win this battle? Well, if you guessed that it was the sea turtle that would win, you were definitely right. Those poor jellyfish don't stand a chance against the sea turtles, but it is kind of nice that they provide food for the sea turtles, and every animal needs food. Some animals eat other animals, and some animals eat plants, and some animals eat both. The next group of invertebrates that we're going to study is the echinoderm. And this is a group that is defined, or the unique characteristic about it is that it has, in many cases, it has spiny skin. And in fact, spiny skin is what echinoderm means. One of the other unique characteristics is that they oftentimes have 5 points. And if you look at the starfish above on the left, that red starfish, you can see little tiny spines, but you can also see 5 points. Can you count them? Count those ends of the star. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 points. And then go over here to the sand dollar in the bottom right, and you see like a little flower looking design on the top of the sand dollar. It's really pretty. Can you believe that nature, that Heavenly Father created something like this that was just beautiful and that looked like a flower on the outside of its body? I think that's amazing. So count the petals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 again. Echinoderm animals have many times 5 points. And if you cut them in half, imagine cutting that sand dollar right in half, right down the middle of that top petal. If you start at the top and you cut all the way down, imagine looking at both of those pieces together. They would look symmetrical, or they would look the same. And that's another characteristic of the echinoderms. If you cut the starfish in half, it would look the same on both sides. One of the neatest things about echinoderms is that they can regrow tissue, organs, and limbs. That is kind of a cool superpower, isn't it? You've watched movies with superheroes that have superpowers. Well, echinoderms have a superpower too. If they lose a leg, they can grow another one. In fact, sometimes a single leg can regrow an entire body from one leg. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Well, there's another kind of echinoderm, and it's called a sea urchin, and you can see that right here. But they have sharp spines, and these spines protect them from predators that try to eat them. And they can also sting their predators. Well, those are some echinoderms. Now we're going to move on to another phylum. It's the next phylum. I'm not going to tell you what it is yet, but I want you to look at the pictures here and tell me what you think is similar about all of these pictures. We have snails and slugs and clams and oysters and an octopus and squids are in this group too. They're all part of the next invertebrate phylum. And what is similar about these? They don't all have a shell, but some of them do. But what is similar about their bodies? Well, their bodies are soft. So if you look at the top one, you see a body that's surrounded by a shell. And that body can suck into that shell to protect it if it needs to be protected. Other ones don't have shells, like the squid at the bottom or the octopus at the bottom. It doesn't have a shell, but it's much bigger and much faster, and so that's kind of how it protects itself. Can you think of a mollusk? Oh, I don't think I told you that these are called mollusks. So this is the phylum, the mollusk phylum. So mollusks are invertebrate animals with soft bodies. Some have shells and some don't. Can you think of another mollusk that has a shell? I'm thinking of things like crabs and oysters and think of all the things, the shells that you find on the beach. Actually, I think then you'll probably think of some ideas there. What about ones that don't have a shell, like squids and octopus? Well, here's a fun picture. Look at this poor scuba diver out there. I wouldn't want to be in the water with a giant squid like this one. But they actually have found a giant squid that's as long as 33 feet long, and it weighed over 1,000 pounds. This is how an adult scuba diver would look next to that giant squid. Could you imagine swimming and seeing a squid next to you that size? That would be pretty scary. So where do most of the invertebrate animals that we've studied so far, where do they live? If you think about it, most all of them live in the water. Well, the next two, and worms is the next one, we're going to study worms and arthropods next. And these have many, many animals that live on land. And this is the fifth group of the invertebrates, the worms. Some are super small, and others are really, really big. And remember, worms live everywhere. They live in the water, they live on land, they live on plants, they live in the foods that we eat, and sometimes things that we drink. And sometimes you can even get worms inside of you because of things that you eat that aren't sanitary, or in countries where they don't prepare their food well. And so you have to be careful that you clean the things that you eat so that worms don't get inside of you, and they can cause problems with your digestive system, and then you have to get some medicine. You go to the doctor, and it helps you to get well again. But worms can do some really, really amazing things, and we're going to talk about those a little bit later. The last one is the arthropod phylum. This is the sixth phylum or category of invertebrates that we're going to study today, and it's the final group. And it is kind of like we saved the best for last because it's the biggest group of invertebrates. There are more arthropods than all the others combined. These are all the insects, and they're all the spiders and arachnids. And there's lots of things like here on the left, you see this lobster. That's called a crustacean, and those are all part of this massive arthropod phylum. Some of the other things that are interesting about arthropods in common is that they oftentimes they have an exoskeleton, meaning they have a skeleton on the outside of their body. You have a skeleton on the inside of your body, right? And you can feel those bones. If you just squeeze your wrist or if you pinch your fingers, you can feel the bones in your body. Well, arthropods, in many cases, they have skeletons on the outside of their body that protect their soft tissue, that protect their body, that protect their organs. And here is a crab that we're looking at right now. You see a crab that's sitting on top of a bunch of clams. Well, that crab, if you've ever had crab legs or lobster tail, you have to crunch the outside of it after it's boiled. You have to crunch the outside of it and break off the exoskeleton to get access to the meat or to the body, right? And it's sure tasty. If you haven't had crab or lobster, boy, or shrimp, maybe tell your mom as a celebration for this lesson that you need to have some shrimp. But it's pretty expensive, so they might push back. Anyway, you can try, right? All right, let's think of another arthropod that's very, very common. You can see this arthropod almost any day of the year, running up and down sidewalks. If you drop a little piece of food, you'll see these arthropods gather around it and pick it apart and carry it. They're very strong. They work together as a team. And they're red, they're black. All right, that's probably enough. You've probably guessed that that one is an ant, right? And what do you notice about the shape and features of an ant body? Look at it closely. Do you see the head? I see it. Do you see the legs? Do you see how the legs bend? What do you know that has legs that bend? What do you know that has a head with eyes and a mouth that eats food and a thorax, that's the middle section, and an abdomen, that's like your tummy area, and the muscles that support your whole body, they're called the core, and it's the abdomen that you can see at the bottom of this ant. Well, what does that sound like, right? How are the bodies of arthropods the same as your body? Well, we have eyes, we have ears, and so do they. They have legs, and so do we. We have arms, and so do they. They have a head, they have a thorax, so do we. An abdomen, a digestive system, so they eat food and it processes. And they have waste, just like we do. And they have reproductive organs that help them to make babies, just like we do. And they require oxygen and food to survive, just like we do. They have muscles, and they have a brain. They have a nervous system. Wow. It's amazing how similar we are to arthropods. Really kind of scary when you look at that tarantula there and you look at that person and think there's a lot that's similar. Well, that's it. Let's go through each phylum again real quickly, and we can talk about what we might have learned. Porifera, well, those are sponges, right? And we learned how they filter water. Pretty cool. And Cnidarian, those are like the anemones and the jellyfish, and they sting their prey, don't they? And they can sting us too. And the echinoderms, those are beautiful, symmetrical, five-pointed animals that regenerate tissue, that can regrow limbs and legs and arms. And the mollusca have the soft bodies, and sometimes they have shells and sometimes they don't, right? And worms, there's thousands and thousands of different kinds of worms that have all kinds of different purposes. And they live everywhere. And arthropods, that's the biggest one, right? They're all the insects and all the spiders and some crustaceans too. Well, this week, be on the lookout for invertebrates. Let's see how many you can find. As an assignment, you should go outside right after this lesson and see how long it takes you to find one of these invertebrate animals. Caterpillars, mosquitoes, crickets, snails, honeybees, ladybugs. Remember, they outnumber us 9-1, so there's a lot more of them than there are of us and other vertebrate animals. Well, let's go on to the reasoning section. So we finished the research of this lesson, and now let's think about how this has anything to do with our Heavenly Father. Well, Heavenly Father created all of this, didn't He? He created the earth, as a place for us to live. And He created the sun to give us warmth and light and to make plants grow so that we'd have food to eat and so that we'd have oxygen to breathe. And why do you think He created those plants? Well, to give us food, right? And to help us build houses. We build houses out of wood that comes from trees, and clothing and beauty and air to breathe. And why do you think Heavenly Father created the animals? Well, lots of reasons, right? To provide companionship, food, clothing, help with our work, and so on. There's lots and lots and lots of reasons, isn't there? Well, Heavenly Father created everything with a purpose. And that's really important to understand, that it's not just you and me and all of us, the children of Heavenly Father, that have a purpose, but it's all the animals too. One big difference between us and animals is that we have the ability to choose right and wrong, and we aren't guaranteed to live the purpose of our lives. We have to work to do that, don't we? We have to make good choices, and you can do that. That's the exciting thing about our lives, is that we can do the things that will allow us to know what our divine mission is. And each of us are unique, and we have a different purpose. Just like these animals are different, and they have a unique purpose, we also have a unique purpose too. And so if throughout your life you pray and ask Heavenly Father to tell you what you should do, He will tell you. And it will almost always have something to do with you helping His other children. So His purpose for you is that you serve Him by serving all of His other children and helping them to make good choices. So just remember that. Heavenly Father has created everything, and each of those things have a unique purpose. Well, we do too. You are also very, very unique. You're not the same as anybody else that lives, and you also have a very, very unique purpose. Well, I'm excited that you came and joined me for this lesson today, and we're going to study more about invertebrates in our next lesson. So have a wonderful day.